call this meeting to order. It's July 24th, about 8 minutes after 12 noon, and we'll start with some introductions.
Austin Davidson, Natalie Wilson,
Emma Torkelson,
Barbara Jones,
Forrest Dunbar,
Dean Gibson, the council.
Amy Zolder.
I'm Pete Peterson, Chair. Miss Kennedy will be here today.
Sadie Edmonds.
Okay, Sadie.
Eugene Carl Haberman, I represent myself.
Right, and so we'll go starting out with some new business. We've got a copy of the vacancy ordinance that was postponed last evening.
You need to say something about this?
You can certainly do that, Ms. Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we discussed this. You were there on Friday, right, Pete, when we talked about this? Because we were doing ice cream. Forrest, you were there for part of it, or? So, we worked through this. I and Barbara and Dean worked through this vacancy ordinance, and then I think either the night before or the morning of, John Weddleton asked if Matt Farina, who gave the presentation on Friday, could come and talk to us about ranked choice voting and how it might impact the language in this ordinance. And so we invited him to come. We sort of started a discussion, but I think there's a lot more to explore. So I didn't want to move forward with this without doing that. And so John and I are going to talk more with Matt and then come up with what we think makes sense and bring it back to this committee, hopefully next month, and then have a work session with whatever we think makes all of us think makes sense. So we haven't done that yet. Matt did send suggested change language, which I haven't read.
Mr. Dunbar.
Yeah, I didn't get to hear, I wasn't there for the whole conversation, so maybe this was already addressed and I just missed it, but there are sort of three primary issues I see with ranked choice voting as applied to this ordinance. And so the first is the relative complexity of doing it and doing it sort of on the fly. And I know that places like Maine that have done it, they have basically computer programs that help automatically do it. This is a much smaller number of votes, but it would take not an insignificant amount of training to make sure we were doing it correctly. And I missed the exercise with the ice cream. I saw the vote totals.
Should I respond to that one and then I was going to show you something that, first of all, I'm not an expert on ranked choice voting, and it might be that after we review this and think more about it that it's not the thing we want to do.
Sure.
But it didn't seem that complex. Hi, Mr. Rivera.
Are you doing this?
I am not, no.
Matt brought this chart, and essentially for all the applicants, we would all just select 1 through 5 how they rank.
Right.
So I think one of the disadvantages is that it's public,
So this is
that
gonna-
you rank someone 5th, right,
Right.
out of 5, or
So
10th out of 10.
Right, so that was going to be my third issue, actually, but we'll bump up to second. And I think it's sort of an irreducible problem. We have to rank people, and it's more than just a yes or no, up
Yep.
or down. And that would be public, which is fundamentally different than every other ranked choice voting I know of in the country, which are secret ballots. But for me, of course they are. Like every time we ask people to vote on human beings, it's a secret ballot. Well, that's not exactly true, because we do have to, our who we chose is public, but when it comes to the public, they get to have secret ballots.
Where
And
is that in the code? Is that a charter thing that has to be public?
I think it's because the clerk can speak
But
to
we're
it.
talking about elections generally, you don't know, we're talking about assemblies.
Because, we could potentially change that. There's sort of
the election for
political...
the chair is a secret ballot. When you do the reorganization,
How about filling in a
and that's
vacancy?
in code. If any vacancies right now that are public record, then it was community.
Does it have to be?
Is that in code
Yeah, and just assembly member,
or charter?
I don't think it has to be. And I think we've talked about making them secret at one point. We were talking about it.
There's pros and cons to that too, but...
That's an interesting
something we can
idea.
think about.
Yeah.
We could make
It
that.
becomes political if you think the people you're voting for or who's actually selected as the appointee.
Right.
Now they can see how you all voted and they know what they're
Right.
going to get along with, right?
The other thing is, so ranking ice creams, all well and good. If I was ranking people, I would intentionally, if I thought this is the person I want, and this is the person I think is their strongest competitor, I would rank their strongest competitor the lowest, even if they were the second most qualified, and put one of the least qualified people second, right? And the problem is, if a bunch of people do this, game theory, right? If a bunch of people do that, you can end up with a really inferior choice.
Rigged voting.
Right, and because there's a lot more gamesmanship in that in ranked choice voting. So the third issue I have, and I saw the results, and the person that won didn't get a majority of first place votes, at least in the. And so for me, I think that even if we do ranked choice voting, there has to be a runoff for me to support it. There has to be a second round, because if you want to use ranked choice voting to get to the top two choices, fine. But I mean, not my preference, but fine. But the runoff is crucial to me, that we don't get a situation where someone who actually isn't the preference of a majority of the assembly gets the seat.
Well, they are the preference of the majority of the assembly. It just might have been in second or third, right? So the reason that the person might win with 4 votes, if there's 4, and 2, say, is that the second place and third place, there were really high numbers there, and that's why that person with 4 first place votes wins.
Right, but that's you could have someone who is actually intensely not wanted by the assembly, by a significant chunk of the assembly, but they get 4 first place votes and 1 second place vote, and then there's vote splitting among the other more preferable candidates, who all end up with a lot of second and third place votes, and then that inferior, what to me would appear to be an inferior choice, advances. Like there are, there's just a much greater chance of that happening if there is no runoff.
Sounds like Forrest would make a great member of this little working group. Look at his face.
I mean, it's funny. I've been approached by ranked choice voting people a bunch of times, and I am sort of like mildly in support of it, I would say. I think it would be more useful at the state level where there's a primary system. But I just, in terms of things I like to spend my energy on, I think there's a lot of other things like automatic voter registration or making voting days, or vote by mail is a great example. There are other things that actually increase participation, whereas ranked choice voting is confusing and sometimes leads to a less optimal result. Now in this case, it's a very small example, so the stakes are relatively low. But again, I would really be in favor of that, some kind of second round, so that you don't get some perverse effect.
Yeah. I wonder what Matt would think about that. I mean, part of the argument is you don't need to do a second round. You just have 1 vote, and then you can figure out who wins.
But even in the ice cream example we got a, I think to me, what appeared to be a suboptimal result.
Chocolate?
Was that what ended up winning? Was it chocolate?
What is wrong with him, you guys? No, I'm just kidding.
Chocolate's fine.
Yeah.
Chocolate's good. It's kind of boring, but it's good. But yeah, I think cookie dough was my choice. But
That was not even an option.
was it not? It was cookies and cream. Yeah, there was something like that. There was something with.
No, it was very boring. It was like mint chip, chocolate chip, vanilla, strawberry, and
chocolate
chocolate.
chip.
It's
That was
like,
something.
yeah, where is cookies and cream? Anyway,
Yeah,
obviously a sidebar, but
Cookies and cream did not
Yeah.
apply to fill the vacancy.
no, and it should have.
Right.
Because it was one.
Right.
Sorry.
I think you have to translate all that. So I think I've communicated my primary objections: complexity, the public nature of the vote, and the fact that you can get a intensely suboptimal result with without a second round.
And on top of that, I'm not sure that the average person, public, would have much understanding of what ranked choice voting is.
Yeah.
Now, there may be some people who've come from a state that has it, so they're familiar with it.
Right.
But I think the vast majority of people would be unfamiliar with it.
Well, clearly we are right now. I don't think this is actually about not to impugn Matt's motives, but I don't think this is actually about us like figuring out a much better way to select a person. I think it's more about exactly what you're talking about. We want an example of ranked choice voting in the wild so more people learn about it. We are a guinea pig or a test program.
Though that said, I
for-
think plenty of places are doing it. It's not like, whoa,
In-
this is crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
there-
other places are.
The only
so
state,
there could be an
the only state I know that's doing it is Maine, and it's caused a big kerfuffle. Although it did help them get rid of a truly terrible congressman, so that's nice.
That's good.
And then other than that, I think it's only a few cities have done it. I think Oakland, California has done it. I mean, it's one of the few. There's like
Yeah, there are a
dozens.
few localities in
But
California that you
I don't know. I've never heard of another legislative body doing it, doing ranked choice voting to select their own members. I think that might be novel. Maybe it
Yeah,
exists, but
I don't
I haven't
know.
heard of it.
And, and the reason that we, of course, are talking about this is because of the appointment situation that went to several ballots,
Sure.
several votes last summer.
But I think
And I
that's
think because of the changes we put in on page 5, letter E,
yeah.
that I think was ideas that you had added, Mr. Dunbar,
Yeah.
I think those would make it much less likely that we would get to a situation like that in the future.
Yeah, I think it's less likely. I don't think it's impossible, but I also don't think that what happened last summer was the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, it's not that big.
You know, it was a little bit embarrassing. It was kind of funny. It took a while, but ultimately we got a really good outcome. Now the question is, what would happen if neither person had backed down? I think we would have just stayed there until some assembly member changed their vote. Some assembly member would have changed their vote because none of us.
Were people changing their votes? I mean, maybe they were. Yeah.
Yeah, then somebody got a one. There was like a yeah.
Well, no, I just mean the 5 and 5, right? So it's
Yeah,
5
yeah,
5.
yeah.
Someone's like, fine, I'll vote for so and so.
And someone else
is
did.
like,
The other one.
fine, I'll vote for so, and then you're in the same boat. I mean,
That's
that's
funny.
kind of what I guessed happened. But
That's funny.
So these are all really good comments. I jotted down some notes. I don't actually personally have preference. I felt like John was really into it. This would be sort of a new thing. This seems like the right place if we were going to do this to do it because it's kind of low stakes. So for me, it was worth putting this on hold to give John an opportunity to explore it. But I think we should see whether it makes sense. And we could always even put, a ranked choice vote version forward and another, we could, and for the work session, and we could really see where people are landing.
Mr.
We
Dunbar?
could rank the two. I think that I think it's so. Austin, you came in during a really unique year. There were 2 of these appointments in 1 year, and I don't think there had been another appointment for like 3 or 4 years before that. Like, these are really low occurrence events. So it cuts both ways. On the one hand, that means that we can set up a super complicated system, and at least we don't have to deal with it. We don't have to deal with it like every 2 years,
Yeah.
which is nice. On the flip side, it also means that 3 years from now or 5 years from now, some assembly is going to finally look at this code. No one's going to remember that we
Yeah.
did this and be like, "Oh, what the hell? Like, what are we doing here?" And we have to like sort of retrain ourselves on how to do this because it's just, I think, is a really infrequent event. It also cuts against the idea that it's going to have much educational impact because it'll happen once every few years, and there will be 8 people in the assembly chambers, and maybe ADN will show up to do an article, God willing.
True, but if it were, if they even have someone working there anymore.
Yeah.
If it were going to have a big impact, though, then we'd be arguing it's too big of an impact too fast. So it's kind of like you can argue it either
Sure.
way. Again, I don't have any personal stake in this. I'm just trying to give. I feel like I like how we've been moving as assembly, where we're like, instead of rushing, John's like, I could put an amendment for Tuesday, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
We spent months on this. Like, let's.
Sure.
So that was my hope, was that if I offered to spend the time, but I think, it might not be the right thing.
Well, and something that you said at the work session on Friday that I have been thinking about and was wondering about, you said you thought that ranked choice voting was, the phrase you used,
Like what?
less partisan,
Oh,
and I actually couldn't think of a reason why it would be less partisan, so I'm wondering, could you explain that? Do you remember saying that?
yeah, I did say that. I don't know. I mean, I think it's understood to be more nonpartisan, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So I'm trying to think through the logistics. I mean, if you're voting for several people, maybe it's more nonpartisan when there's only a 3 or 4 people. I guess if there were 10 applicants, it's sort of hard to know. But if you only had a few people and you did it for second, third, and maybe the person that you voted for second, which was not kind of your, from a partisan perspective, your top choice, but that person might win, but you like something about them because you voted for them second, rather than having like red or blue, and you can only pick one of those, and half the people pick this and half the people pick this. But I guess we'd have to run some examples to.
Well, and looking at ranked choice voting, in a larger setting, say for primary elections in a state or whatever, you may end up in certain states where 2 members of the same party would be ranked 1, 2, and would go to the November election.
Yeah.
And therefore, you would eliminate that other party
Which is what they,
from being a choice on the November election.
But doesn't that mean that the overwhelming majority wanted those 2 people? So I mean,
unless
I
there were
guess-
unless there were 8 members of the other party running. So
Yeah.
this has been the challenge with top 2 voting in California,
Right.
where there are districts that are heavily Democratic, but a bunch of Democrats file and 2 Republicans file.
Yeah.
And there's a worry that only
It's
the
basically
Republicans will
gonna
make
be
it,
like
or vice versa.
Anchorage mayoral race.
Yeah. What has... Yeah, I mean, it's just really hard to create a system where you can avoid that.
Mr. Gates?
Yeah, I wanted to mention this statute that's applicable here, sort of. We can't really talk about in theory ranked voting or weighted voting in terms of a general election, like, or an early election. I'm not sure if this applies to, because the statute says we can't. So it's 2060 applies to home municipalities, we can't have weighted voting. But I'm not sure if that applies to the appointment process. So
Wait.
Oh, it does
Where
say
is that?
Scope and limit.
In
It's
state
in Title
statute?
29. Yeah,
Oh.
state law.
What does it say?
29,
Read it again.
2060. It says, an assembly may not provide for weighted voting, and this is in a section called assembly composition and apportionment. I think, and there's an AG opinion that talks about weighted voting, but it talks more about apportionment, and if you have more than 10% deviation right from the ideal population of representation, then you got an assembly member whose vote carries more weight,
Yeah.
less weight, right? But this statute, I don't know if it really applies to voting to fill vacancy by appointment. And that's, I'm not sure of. But I think that this is sort of persuasive in terms of the state statutes and municipalities not to use weighted voting in our elections. So should we use it in the appointment process? Is sort of
Well,
what I
it's
think.
not. Yeah.
Yeah, I interpret that as dealing with a different issue. I would imagine that
Yeah.
law was probably passed before ranked choice voting was even made like a thing in a lot of places. I think they're talking about this vote shouldn't count more than
From
anyone
that,
else.
yeah.
All of our votes are going to count the same. They're just going to be split sort of in an interesting way.
Ms. Jones?
And the other issue is that I believe, I don't know if it's Matt, I have been approached several times about a group that was doing an initiative on ranked choice voting. And, I've provided them all of the information for filing an initiative with the Assembly and our rules of procedure. They did ask to meet with me. I declined because I believe that would be partisan if I helped someone file. They thanked me for the information I provided. I understand they did file that initiative petition with the state to make the state go to ranked choice voting. So I don't know what the status of that is right now, and I don't know how that would affect that state law.
So that was done recently? I mean, in the last few months, or?
Yes, since the last election.
Wow.
The state that I read only applies to municipalities. Yeah, I was searching to Title 15 state elections. They don't have a similar provision there.
Interesting. Ms. Quinn Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dean, could you try to confirm whether that section means what Forrest and I think it means, or if there's any way it could be interpreted to apply to this situation? That state statute?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
but
probably
think
not a
that
lot
would
on
just
it.
be arguable.
Yeah.
Have it.
Let's do it till somebody sues
I
us.
would search more.
Okay.
I would do some more research on
Okay.
that, and might help to have Becky's view as well. We just present this to her.
Yeah.
Great.
We'll reach out to the other legal minds in City Hall and see what their interpretation is.
Great. Thank you, guys. That's very
Good.
helpful.
Okay, any other discussion about ranked choice voting while we're on that subject? Do we have any other discussion about 2019-89?
I'm sorry. One other thing about ranked choice voting, I guess we should probably have some sort of cost estimate of, because if they were not barred by the statute from doing this from the appointment process, I guess John might want to pursue it as an amendment here, right? And I think there would be a cost because, like Mr. Dunbar mentioned, you might need special software to handle the process, stuff like that. How much is that going to be?
Mr. Davidson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt said he did this with an Excel spreadsheet, and he suggested it would be very easy. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Maybe a cell spreadsheet?
yes.
On cell phone?
Excel.
Oh, Excel,
Yeah.
okay.
He said that he just did it with Excel, and you just add it up, and
Ms. Jones?
One other point I wanted to make before we left the AO is, Mr. Dunbar mentioned how that was kind of an unusual circumstance, that you continued to be tied. And what would you do if someone didn't change their vote? And I think that we added a provision to this code that a motion to reject all applicants is always in order, and that motion could be made if you'd gone 3 successive votes, and then if you even went to the top 2 and continued to tie, a motion to reject all applicants would be in order. And if you think about that, we're at 30 days after the vacancy. We have a special election scheduled in another 30 days. If you were at impasse and you rejected all applicants, you'd have a new person appointed in 30
Yeah.
days anyway. So that is still an option here.
Interesting.
great.
Okay. Any other discussion about this AO?
Okay.
I guess we'll go down to old business. Do we have any reports from our drafting subcommittee on charter changes?
Sadie, do you want to report since you're the subcommittee on charter changes?
We are working on it. I don't know. It's we've got something really much. I don't know. There's not much to say really.
I just asked you because you sent us a draft recently.
Yeah.
So
I
we
did.
met.
Because we're gonna talk about it next week. They're not super major changes really. So they're just extending the time based on. It's really just extending time because the population has increased so much. Really, that's the basics of the changes that are being made.
You're talking about going from 30 to 60 days or 60 to 90 days?
Yeah, it's 90 is the standard pretty much that we're using.
Okay. All right.
And we're meeting next Wednesday at 4, right, to talk through that.
Okay.
We had a pretty long, maybe hour and a half, 2 hours, really good meeting. Dean, Forrest, Barbara, Sadie, and probably Natalie and I we came up with this. And then, Forrest is really helpful, as usual. And then Sadie drafted it, I think. So we probably could plan to bring that back to you guys next time.
So we can maybe think about putting that on the agenda for next month then?
Sounds great, yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Could be a big
All right.
we're going through both of those.
We have any update from signature requirements on envelopes? Is that is progressing at all?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Jones?
It has, and I'll talk to you about 3 things regarding the Title 28 drafting subcommittee. One, we're slogging through all of Title 28. That is a great team. It's Dennis Wheeler, Becky Wint Pearson, Dean Gates, myself, and Sadie, and then Emma, and help me, is it Torkelson?
Yes.
Great, I got it, Torkelson. And so we're slogging through all of Title 28, and we're making some good progress. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the signature requirements on envelopes. We have a meeting on Thursday. We've been meeting every Thursday on this. And last Thursday, we had a proposal for the new signature on the envelopes. Emma has worked that up, has a draft ready. She's doing that for her internship. And now we have lots of envelopes from other jurisdictions that we're looking at. And we're going back to the committee again this Thursday. So we'll have something on envelopes probably by the end of August or the 1st of September.
Mr. Dunbar.
Can you give us a little preview of what that is? I mean, because this is a very common complaint I get still, is I have to sign on the exterior of the envelope. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
Well, there's probably 2 issues. So the issue is signature on the exterior of the envelope. The issue that we were looking at was the witness requirement. So let me talk about those separately, and I'm talk about the witness first. So a lot of times people misread the outside of the envelope, and I'm Barbara Jones. I sign Barbara Jones, and then I have Emma sign as a witness. I don't need a witness unless I can't sign my name. So that witness signature is confusing to people.
Okay.
So that's one issue. The second, more problematic issue is there's nothing on the envelope that has a criteria for the witness. There's no oath for the witness. There's no requirement at all.
You do have to be 18. That is the
18.
one requirement.
Is that on the envelope?
I believe it says a witness who is 18. I can look that up
Okay,
again. But
so that is a concern for us that if you can't sign your envelope, or if for example, this is the fraud issue now. So you say someone can't sign the envelope, you make the X, anyone can sign it. We have no criteria to check that the person couldn't sign or that the witness is who they say they are.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of proposals out here, and I will tell you the 2 proposals. One is we're just going to remove the witness block altogether. It'll say, if you are unable to sign the envelope, contact the voter hotline or go to the website. And then we're going to give the instructions there. One of the problems with the signature the way it is, this year 2 ballots were rejected because the person wasn't able to sign, and someone signed as a witness and signed power of attorney. Well, if someone would have called us, we would have said, you can't sign as power of attorney. Because voting is an individual right. It's not a right that you can delegate to someone by a power of attorney. You can request an absentee ballot, you can request a temporary ballot, you can get voter registration by power of attorney, but you cannot vote. So we would clarify that. Then the other proposal was to require, if you can't sign, you call up and say, I can't sign, then the answer is, and the proposal was a qualified voter in Anchorage signs or a notary. And you just and then we tell them that on the phone, and then that's how they return that signature. So we have some authentication. We can check the voter that's qualified voter in Anchorage or even Alaska, and then we have the notary block, which is an oath, and the notary has to check the person's ID. So that was the initial proposal. So that's kind of where we're at. We're still working through that.
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Mr. Chair. Why are people not typically able to sign? Are they hospitalized or really old or maybe have disabilities or what's the usual reason?
Well, we, of course, don't ask that
That's
and
true.
wouldn't know that. But yes, it would be because someone is a paraplegic or disabled in some way and not able to sign.
I'm just wondering if people who have,
Illiteracy?
Yep, that's another one.
It's still legal to be illiterate.
But if they're illiterate, then how are they reading the instructions?
Did you know that you can always have an assistant and someone can read the ballot to you and tell you what the ballot says, and then you can direct them which oval to mark?
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm just wondering, I mean, we just might not be able to solve a problem for every single voter,
Mhm.
but I'm wondering if people can't, even sign if they're going to be able to get a notary and get to a place where there's a notary. And I mean, I actually think it's a good alternative. I'm just wondering what universe, who are these folks and how can we best help them?
So there is another alternative, which is special needs voting, and we do provide special needs voting. So, and with special needs voting, we deliver ballots to people at their homes. Anyone can be a representative. Interestingly, under special needs voting, the representative, and this is one time that you can pick up a ballot from any vote center and you can take the ballot can leave, but the representative signs an oath, and the oath says that I didn't vote for this person. So the League of Women Voters assists the clerk's office, and we have them lined up to deliver ballots on election day. I think they delivered about 10 out to a hospital on one election. And then the other option is, we have people that issue replacement ballots, so we have a small team that does that. But then that ends on election day or the week before election day. So then we have those workers, and so those workers can deliver special needs ballots to people who for some reason or other didn't get their ballot or aren't able to vote at a polling location or accessible vote center.
So if someone who is unable to sign would go to a accessible vote center, is one of the voting workers allowed to sign as a witness, or how would that work?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So remember, if you come to an accessible vote center and you're not able to sign the ballot, first we're going to check your ID, so we know that you're a qualified registered voter. And then you get the ballot and you come out and you say, I can't sign because both of my arms are broken or something. And then you make the X, and then we witness. We also have a log where people who assist people sign the log. And the log says that you didn't vote for the person, that you understand it's an election offense if you voted for the person, and so then we have those people sign a log. One of the reasons that we have that log is we want to make sure that one person isn't going out and getting a whole bunch of people to come in and vote and then assisting them. So we have that log, and it's a violation of law to vote for them. And you've signed the log indicating that you understand that.
Fantastic.
So, Mr. Chair, yeah, so on the second issue about the signatures on the outside of the envelope.
Oh, that was the second issue. We are looking at this redesign of the envelopes, and so I know Amy has been involved in this issue. So one of the issues that we're looking at, when we redesign the envelope, what will that look like? So will the, if we take off the witness on this part, what will this look like? Will the flap go, instead of partway down, will the flap go all the way down? So we're looking at that as well too. When we started vote by mail, we made a decision not to have the flap go all the way down. We got a legal opinion that it was not confidential, that we were not violating confidentiality by having the signature on the outside. The issue is that will be more cost.
Yeah.
If we have this on the outside, there's a higher cost.
But the
We-
machine is capable of still
We don't,
opening and reading it.
we don't have a machine that would do that now. Amy and I discussed that we do have workers that open envelopes. So, let's say in the old system, it goes through like this. Well, then they slice open this and separate. Well, guess what? We could have them work at the beginning and we could have them slice this open. We could figure it out. So it would be a manual process. We don't have the money budgeted to buy a machine to do this.
So
But wouldn't that cost additional labor?
Yes.
So it would cost just one way or the other, whether we bought a machine or whether we have relation workers do it individually in a physical way.
That is true. I think we think that the cost for employees is less than the cost for the machine. But we don't know that yet. We don't have a machine and I have no budget for that. I do have a budget for workers.
But do they make a machine? Is there one out there, or would we have to hire some sort of company to create a specific machine?
No, Mr. Chair, there are machines because other jurisdictions do this.
I see. Mr. Dunbar?
just a quick follow-up. So thinking about like literally the industrial process of this. So right now we have workers slit it open, remove the ballot, and then place the two things in the envelope in one basket and the ballot in the other. Is that how it works?
Close. So what we have is we have a slicer dicer, or they have millers. And so all 100 envelopes are placed in the slicer dicer and it's turned on and it just slicer dices all of them. Then the stack that's sliced or diced is placed on your table and then you.
Okay. So, and then the signature, but the signature verification happened before that then?
It did.
So isn't that the problem? You'd have to slice open the envelope, then do signature verification, right? With the
Right.
flapping all the way down.
Right, so it would be a new procedure that would happen before we ran the envelopes through the mail sorter. So there would have to be a new procedure where you somehow,
Yeah.
what some of the jurisdictions do is they have a perforation around the signature, and then you just remove the perforation
Oh, that's
and then
interesting.
run it through the mailer sorter, and then you open it and all that kind of stuff.
But it literally does require someone or some group of people to. There's an additional sort of hand movement that needs to happen, and for what was it? How many ballots are we getting?
Well,
80,000.
80,000 the first year and about 67,000 last year.
Yeah. Okay.
So the section, so we could actually cover the signature up with a perforated part of the.
So the whole flap would go over.
Yeah.
But this part of the flap has a potential perforation, and then when we get it, we have workers pop it out, and then we put it in the mail sorter, and it sorts and scans and does everything the same. So the beginning would just be a little bit different.
And so my question is, does that perforated section get accidentally torn off just through the mail process? I mean, it's a mail-in ballot, so.
It probably wouldn't, because it's not like something hanging off the top. It's hard in the section here. So I don't think that anybody's had problems with tearing it off. People they could call us up and say, "Oh, I accidentally did this," and we'll say,
Replacement ballot.
or drop it in there anyway. We don't care. You've saved us some work from perforating it. Put it in a drop box. Put it in the mail. It doesn't change your vote that you pulled the perforation out.
But a person who is resistant to switching to vote by mail because they're worried about their signature being stolen or whatever it is that they're worried about, if they accidentally found that their ballot was torn and their signature was exposed, they might call and ask for a replacement ballot for that reason? Would that be a legitimate reason for them to get a replacement ballot then?
You know, since a replacement ballot is costly, you know, it's over $2.50, we would not encourage someone to get a replacement ballot for that reason. Of course, if a voter wanted a replacement ballot, we would insist it, absolutely, we'd send it. But that is not a reason to get a replacement ballot. The other thing that I want to remind you is, remember, this year we swapped. So last year we got most of the ballots back by mail. The total other was a little bit higher, you know, accessible vote centers and drop boxes were, total was higher. This year it swapped. So this year drop boxes was way higher than mail. So there's no issue of a problem with confidentiality when you're putting it in the Dropbox. The only people that see it are 2 election workers. So we think that that trend is going to continue, and Amy's actually ordering more Dropboxes this year, and she's ordering a bigger Dropbox because we had so many ballots at the LUSAC, we have to have a bigger box over there.
Wow.
And where's the other one?
Through the chair, the other one is going to be at Eagle River.
Eagle River,
Yep.
I see.
Bigger drop boxes because they're very, very popular.
And so are we going to need to find additional locations for drop boxes then this year? Well, that'll be a discussion for future.
I'm gonna need a bigger boat.
Well, and if I'm remembering correctly, that King County has had continually increasing number of people in drop boxes since they have gone to vote by mail. And so this is something that, a trend that we can probably consider will continue here as well.
Especially combined with the automatic voter registration.
So, Mr. Chair, I was going to talk to you about 3 issues on the Title 28 drafting subcommittee. And one was we're progressing all the way through. 2 was the signature requirements. And 3 concerns another ordinance that Emma worked on for us. And we're just about ready for that one to be presented. Where are we at with that ordinance?
As far as I know, Sadie finished making the changes that you wanted made for the second draft, but otherwise, she suggested adding more for the whereases, correct?
Yeah.
And other than that, I think it's done and ready.
So that,
Would you like to give us a short synopsis of what that is?
Sure. It's essentially the clerk wanted to add or give herself an extra week on most of the deadlines because as it is now, in one case, she has 1 day turnaround for, what is the specific thing?
so it's filing for office, which Amy does for us. Filing for office, it ends on a Friday. Withdrawal date is like Wednesday. Ballots are due on Wednesday. So we send it to Dean and legal to review. They have like 1 day to get back to us with edits. And propositions were the same. What were your deadlines for propositions? Amy, do you remember?
Through the chair, I think the deadline was pretty similar. It was like 1 or 2 days that the attorneys got to look at it and do all their changes or any edits.
So yeah, that's not much time if you've got a complicated issue, and some of these issues get pretty complicated as we found out.
So effectively, each date is moved back about 7 days. A few of them are a little bit more because they were posting notice dates, and those were originally scheduled for Saturdays, I believe, and a couple Mondays. And the clerk found, or thought,
Eric might have tried to do.
found that it would make a lot more sense to have it on a Sunday because that's the day with the highest readership. The way that the code is written now, you have some flexibility backward or like ahead of the date because it's no later than a certain number. But we just streamlined it so all of the notice dates fall on a Sunday, and you know, if necessary, you could do it earlier. But they all fall on a Sunday. We also collapsed. There's 3 sections. Notice for bonded indebtedness, notice for what are the three?
Accessible
Accessible vote
vote centers
centers.
and polling locations and
Propositions? No.
No, it was just.
It was just
polling
the-
locations, accessible voting centers, and
The notice of election.
Oh, right. So they had two sections. One that said you must give notice of where the polling locations are, and one when they're open, I believe. And so we just combined those, and then we also combined bonded indebtedness into that. So it's one section, so we can just have one notice as opposed to posting 6, because it each requires 2. So it just combines them all. That will save money, save time, save confusion, because effectively all 3 sections were exactly the same. Bonded indebtedness had a slightly longer requirement, but we added that into the notice of elections section. And then the locate, like we literally just added and locations to the time that the polling places are open. So it just collapsed everything and made it simpler.
Okay. Great, so you're getting close to finish to that, so that's something that we might have on our, a finished product on our agenda possibly next month.
Yes. So I think we're shooting for the 6th to have it introduced. Correct?
So we were going to try to introduce it on the 6th, but if the committee would like to look at it, we could send it to the committee or bring it back on the 20th. We're going to try and have a work session on it before Emma left for college, but the committee probably should review it. One of the issues that we wanted to do, we've got these 2 offs, the timelines and the envelope, because we want to give everyone notice. Filing for office is going to be 7 days earlier. Getting those propositions in is going to be 7 days earlier. So we would like to do those this fall before election season starts, and then we'll probably get the full Title 28 to you in November or so.
Okay.
Can I, so like filing for assembly, right now what is assembly mayor, like February 1st or something?
It's 67 days, so it's
Okay.
usually the end of January, the 1st of February.
So
Now
that'll go back 7 days.
the middle of January.
Cool.
Now, it is going to have a tiny impact on the assembly. We typically have a 3-week break in between in December, and you will probably not get a 3-week break because I know, I'm sorry. Unless the stars align and the first meeting in December is like on December 1st and the second meeting is December 14th, it might work out then. But we just think this is sufficiently important and that the lawyers need this time. I don't know if you know, last time on the ARDSA bond, where I believe Mr. Kropp and Ms. Quinn Davidson, I think you were involved in making some amendments to the ARDSA bond. Well, what happened is you amended the title, you amended the chart, you amended the AM, everything was fixed. And we had ballots that were ready to go. We were sending them to our printer. Oh, look, Dean is getting embarrassed. And and Dean said, you forgot to change the dollar amount in the prop language. So this was after everything was done, and there was a debate and lots of work had to be done to figure out what the new dollar amount was per $100,000. And it was changed at the last minute. We don't want to do that anymore. It was too stressful on all of us.
So why would this make it so we don't have as long of a break? Because we need to move our meeting schedule? Or what was that connection?
Okay, so...
I mean, I'm not just concerned about that, I'm just confused.
Right. So when we determine your meeting schedule, you know, we put it, we just try to give you a long break, and we move the
January back.
meeting.
I got
Yeah. So it's just 2 meetings in January.
Got it.
So we make it the 4th and the 2nd. But this might, in some years, make it the
third.
second and the
Or second and third.
4th. Yeah.
And that makes sense because I wasn't thinking about the bond stuff. I was thinking about why does filing a deadline for filing for office matter to us? But you're saying because it's the same deadline as getting things on the bond. package? Okay.
No, they're not the same, but the
But
bond
they're
is
both
what's.
moving back.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
All right. Fantastic. Any other details or discussion on Title 28 drafting? All right. And I believe we might possibly get some information from Dennis Wheeler next month on
Next
the
month.
service area boundaries. Is that possible?
Do you want me to ask Dennis to wait until September?
Or we can wait till September. That'd be fine too.
I think you have a pretty full agenda for
We probably
for August, so,
sounds like we will have.
or we could schedule a longer meeting, Mr. Chair.
Well, and Dennis might be out hunting too in August. I think he likes to moose hunt if I'm remembering correctly.
He may like to moose hunt in September,
Yeah, in
because I
September
think
is
bow hunting is in August. I'm not sure he's a bow hunter.
Okay.
Maybe he likes to fish for rainbow trout though.
No.
His cabin's in that area where I think it starts September 1st.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Well, if it starts September 1st, he should be ready to go by the fourth Wednesday then.
There you go. Yeah, good point. He's got
If he
Okay.
hasn't got one by
Pack and
then, he's
such.
probably not getting one.
I'll ask Dennis if he could be ready by September instead of August.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, I think we have gotten to the bottom here, so I think it's time for audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to
You
participate?
need to extend the meeting because it's now 1 o'clock.
Oh, we've run out of time.
Motion to extend for 2 minutes.
We'll have 3 minutes for.
It's all, it's,
Motion to extend for 2 minutes.
Second.
okay.
It's a 3-minute comment opportunity.
Go ahead.
2 minutes?
You have 3 minutes.
The motion was 2 minutes, though.
Motion to extend for 3.5
Do you
minutes.
amend, do you amend your motion?
I amend my motion to 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Second.
Okay. Go.
My name is Eugene Carl Haven. I represent myself. I follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, decisions made by the governing body is more likely to public Minnesota than the Matsu Valley. First, I'd like to make a note. I haven't said this before. Yes, there's something I haven't said before. But everyone in this room has come after me since I've been monitoring the elections in April 4, 2012. For the note that there was a previous municipal clerk at the time when I came in on that tragic moment where more than 40% of the polling places ran out of ballots even though they printed enough. But everyone in this room, so I've been on this issue on the elections before anyone.
We
that-
arrived later. We have come after you. Okay, I misunderstood.
Excuse me, I had a limited amount of time.
Sorry. You're
So everyone here comes after me. I've been on this issue, and it was the elections of April 3rd, 2012 that brought me into, back in the picture, said, what happened to Anchorage? What happened here? So if there's anyone in the room that has a history and knowledge, I appreciate all of you, okay? And I've raised concerns about elections year after year, and legitimacies and all that, but they're ignored, and they go on and business as usual, and I continue seeing it, but the public is seeing my statements, and they're hearing my statements, even when the press generally doesn't bring them out, because they're hearing me at the microphone, which you, since the members here have been part of trying to limit my time to be at that microphone. So number one, I'll just sum up with a couple of things. You need to squash this thing that you tried to do, you tried to pass through last night and redo. You don't, when the more complicated an issue is, the more notice, the more opportunity the public be heard. You certainly didn't do that last night on the item that you have on the agenda today. You need to squash it and redo it and have a chance for the public. You didn't have a second public hearing on it, and it was fast tracked. And there was too many sidebar meetings on the side outside of even the assembly at the election committee, where you have subcommittees where the public doesn't know what you're saying and you're working out your agenda and creating that stuff. It would have been nice that had been created in the presence of the public at Assembly Ethics Election Committee, but that wasn't done. And the subcommittees, I'm really concerned about that situation. Also, note the meeting here. Please, Chair, with respect, you've been pretty good many times the way you handle meetings. Have these people recognized before they speak, because those tapes, you don't generally know who's speaking unless you can recognize the voice. And in the future on archives, people who may not know the voices, may not know who's really speaking. And that needs to be stopped. And then the last thing I'll say is this, and with just 6 seconds, but let me have 10 seconds to add to that, is please have these agendas and packets and stuff before, not just seconds before the meeting starts, but have it there on the website, and not me having to say just before the meeting starts, and some of you were not present, that the public doesn't have a copy of the agenda, and then I feel very unwelcome by the response to that. And that's all, my time is up with
Can I ask you
respect.
a question?
I don't know if we have time because got to do another
Okay,
extension.
well, then I won't.
Well, it's 3 minutes and 30 seconds,
Okay,
so
so I'll
you've
ask
got
a
it.
quick question. Which thing were you suggesting we squash? What were you talking about? We got a lot of things on the agenda here.
Quick answer, okay?
Yeah, you only got like 4 seconds.
The item that was last night, the public hearing, and this
We've
is,
been working on that for like 9 months.
there should have been 2 public hearings, you only had 1 public hearing.
Oh,
Okay?
okay.
And you had a lot of extensive language in there, a lot of extensive language in there
But we didn't
that
pass
gave
it.
no real time to really address, even before you all.
he
Yes,
wants us
you've been
to
working on it. Let
extend
me
the public
brief
hearing
you.
as opposed to-
Yes, you've been working on it, but where have you been working on it? On subcommittees, not necessarily in this room where you know I'm here, generally, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, and I just, one last thing, that's
Yeah.
all I'll say. For the record, please spell my name C-A-R-L as my middle name, because the minutes that go out for the assembly meetings have K-A-R-L. Thank you.
Okay. Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.